Hello, this is Caroline Ulstrup, and welcome to the Diata Health Podcast. On this week's episode, I am speaking with the lead physician and founder of the Diata Health program, Dr. Constable, and we are chatting about everything from her personal journey with weight loss to how she became an expert in the biochemistry of weight loss, as well as some tactical tips for the summer. So with that in mind, I would like to open up the convo and just hear a little bit more from you directly. Why is weight loss your mission? What brought you to weight loss? What drives you to do this day in and day out, weekdays?
I went to graduate school and studied biochemistry. Then I went to medical school. Then I did a residency in internal medicine. And then I ended up studying the treatment of overweight and obesity. But this is both a personal and a professional interest because the problem is so universal here in our country and spreading really in the civilized and in non-third world countries all over the world. And yet the solutions, many of them are not correct. Many of them are very, very antiquated. And the success that we have had in our program speaks for itself. So clearly what we are doing in our program is the correct answer because we have no magic wand that makes the scale go down. We have many patients that have lost 30, 50, 100, 200 pounds. And so this is life-changing, both on a personal level to patients as well as medically, both in terms of preventative and how they live their lives day to day.
Great. So there are a few points that, of course, I know you work on the weekends as well. What makes you so passionate about this space?
Weight is the leprosy of this generation. It's a problem that's ubiquitous. 90% of Americans today are overweight or obese. And yet the solutions that are available to most people, the knowledge is both conflicting and confusing. And so having made this personal journey myself, I became very interested in this. Dive into more just based off you said right there. So the two main topics I want to make sure we cover are, number one, I want to hear from you directly a little bit more about why this is a personal journey, a little bit more about when you were overweight and your experience with weight, what that looked like in terms of what approaches you tried and how you came to really figure this out. And then the second point that I definitely want to jump into is around why this is such a huge problem, given that there are so many companies and players in this space trying to really take on weight loss. Why is it such an issue? Why is nobody able to kind of crack the code? What are people missing? So let's first jump in a little bit more and talk about your personal history. Okay. So the earliest I remember being overweight was probably when I was about 12 years old. I was a little girl growing up in France, going to a little girls' school. And I remember that the teachers decided one day that we all needed to be weighed and measured. And we were all sitting there in our underclothing. And I noticed looking left and right that all the other little girls were really skinny. And for some reason, I had these little rolls on my tummy. And that was the first time I was really aware that I was different from other people. And then as the years went by, it was a time in the 1960s when being thin was just such a huge priority. And I was a chubby little girl and everybody else was thin. I briefly went through a period of anorexia in my junior year and senior year of high school because my mother badgered me and constantly told me that I needed to lose weight. And I just got frustrated and just stopped eating. But then the minute I went off to college, I started eating again. And then I just blossomed back into that weight and heavier. Yeah. And then it got progressively worse. My first year of residency, we lived in scrubs and patients brought us candies and popcorn and little treats whenever they got healthy and left the hospital. And we would eat these all night long. One day, about 8 months into my residency, just having lived in scrubs, I got on a scale and I was up 50 pounds and I was shocked. So I went to another scale and it said the same thing, that I was up 50 pounds and I was shocked again. And it was really another 10 to 15 years of struggling and trying different techniques, everything from grapefruit diets to high carb, zero protein diets, all complex carbs, all protein. Atkins diet came out in the 70s and I tried that, but I could last on that for about 3 days. And then I craved carbohydrates,
Yeah.
exercising more, just absolutely nothing seemed to work. And it felt like I was locked in to this body that I could not escape out of. And then I went to graduate school and studied biochemistry. And that's when everything changed. I started to understand that our bodies are this complex labyrinth of biochemical pathways. And it's just like a great big orchestra. Everything has to work together. And it's not just a question of eating protein or eating carbohydrates or eating fruits or eating vegetables. It's a question of combinations of foods and how they interact. But to be even more sophisticated, it turns out that just eating at different times of days, if you eat the same type of food earlier in the day, it's not the same thing as eating it later in the day. And I started to understand that this was really complicated and that I had to really work on it from different aspects. But then to make things even more complicated, it's not just a question of knowing what to eat on our plate and what time of day we should be eating what foods, but what goes on in our heads.
Yeah.
So it turns out that we have 35 hormones in our body. They're called mainly the leptins and ghrelins, but then there's 33 other ones. Their only job is to make sure you never lose weight. And they don't make you gain or lose weight, but they give you that urge to eat. And one of the things that triggers an urge to eat and release of these ghrelin hormones is stress.
Yeah.
So if you, for example, live in a very stressful home or you have a very stressful job, the first thing you do when you get home is you want to have a nice big glass of wine or a nice big bowl of ice cream. And this usually isn't at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's usually anywhere from 5 p.m. till bedtime. This is when the ghrelin hormones come out the most powerfully. But when I started to understand the biochemistry, the hormones involved, the circadian rhythm of our bodies, all these things that affect our weight, but also our psyche, that's when I started to get truly fascinated by this and started to experiment really on myself. And with really careful planning, never counting calories, but thinking about what I was putting into my body at what time of day and how I was keeping the rest of my life in balance, everything from my stress levels to my sleep levels to my exercise. And it doesn't mean exercising 4 hours a day. When everything fell into balance, all of a sudden, steadily, my weight started to come off and I lost probably close to 100 pounds. And I've never regained that weight in about 25 years.
Yeah.
But it's because I really don't think about calories. I don't look at the amount of grams of carbohydrates on packages. I think about what do I need to eat right now at this meal? And I'm talking about real food that I buy in the grocery store. And also what's the time of day? If I'm feeling the urge to eat at 8 o'clock at night, I'm not going to eat a great big bowl of grapes because that's very high in sugar. So this is how I've learned to think, and this is how I teach patients how to think.
No, absolutely. And so why are other companies not doing something similar? There are so many companies that are just trying to really make an impact here and really help people. Where is everybody else failing?
Well, I think most companies look at one aspect of weight loss. So there are two issues. I think there are some companies that are still very antiquated and they follow the calorie system. And it's a calories in, calories out program. And if you eat more calories than your body burns, you gain weight. And if you eat less calories than your body burns, you lose weight. But that's not correct. And the reason is that all calories are not the same. So if you eat 300 calories of ice cream, it's not the same thing as eating 300 calories of grilled tuna fish.
Yep.
So that is a tremendous failing that people are locked into this old system, this antiquated system that never has and never will work. The second thing is that companies tend to look at one aspect of weight loss, and then they tend to have a one size fits all. So they will tell you, you need to eat more healthy foods on this, say, green list. And don't eat any of these unhealthy foods on this black list. That's just never going to work because, first of all, it turns out that we don't all metabolize food the same way. So we all have those friends that are really thin that seem to eat anything they want and never gain a pound. This is actually true. These people do not metabolize the same as those of us who struggle with our weight. We are not all the same. But the other thing is within one person, when you're 18 years old, you don't metabolize the same way as you do as at 50 years old.
Sure.
So trying to do a one size fits all program with lists is just never going to work. But weight loss has to be approached on a universal level. It has to be approached not only on what you need to eat on your plate, and it has to be individualized to you as a person, but where are your struggles? Where are your challenges? Are you a stress eater at night? How do I handle stress eating? Are you a very social person? I go out 5 times a week and I have to do that because my job calls for that. How do I handle that? So it has to be a program that addresses all the issues of each person. And most programs try to create a one size fits all and also only address one aspect of weight loss. They may address the psychological challenges you have. They may, address the food you put on your plate. But they're not looking at all of the different factors that will affect your success.
Sure.
The other thing is that I don't know any program besides ours that addresses maintenance. And once you lose that weight, there's about a 2% success of maintaining that weight in the country. In our program, we are about 95%. So almost everybody in our program who loses weight maintains it. It's because not only do we work on this as we go through the program, but once you get to goal, we have a whole package and a series of follow-up visits we do talking about maintenance. And if you start to slide, where's the problem and how do we get you back? And that it takes about 2 years before you have, once you've reached goal, it's about 2 years later that if you still maintain your goal, you are successful. You are not successful the day you reach that goal.
That timeline sometimes can be hard for people to stomach, because in today's day and age, we are constantly told, lose 30 pounds, or excuse me, lose 10 pounds in 30 days. We always focus on these very short-term crash diets, but they're just not sustainable. So I think that's something that we have continued to flesh out more and more here, which is our maintenance program, as well as, partnering with all these different chefs, having the dietitian come in, having the chefs design these recipes, having food engineers design products that really work for patients on the program and after the program. The goal is not just to crash off the weight or to even lose the weight. And I think that's where a lot of programs kind of miss the mark. The other thing I would just echo that you said that I think is, obviously different about what we're focused on here is we feel strongly that you see a medical expert. And this touches on, the core of the program that you noted before, which is that the foundation is focused on the biochemistry of your body and how you're metabolizing food. And so if you're having, a wonderful life coach meet with you week after week, that is great to tap into kind of the mindset or psychology pillar, but you're missing everything that's happening under the hood. And so I would love you to speak about a patient that, maybe has tried other programs previously, and then came to us, and has had success.
Yeah. So I would say that most patients that come to us have tried other techniques of weight
Mhm.
loss unsuccessfully. And I have a patient once who was calling our office to find out if she was interested in the program. And she asked the question, what percent of your patients here lose weight? And we were very taken aback by that question because 100% of our patients lose weight. Our patients lose weight. But to answer your question, the reason our program works where others haven't is, again, it's a question of understanding the biochemistry of the body, but also looking under the hood of that particular person. For example, we constantly are diagnosing problems that patients don't know they have that would not be necessarily diagnosed in your primary care doctor's visit.
Hmm.
For example, if you are walking around with high insulin levels, now your fasting insulin is not something your primary care doctor is going to measure, but your insulin tells you that your pancreas is on overdrive because you're eating way too many carbohydrates. But the problem is that high insulin levels lock up your fat cell. So you can have high insulin levels and be eating 1,000 calories of proteins, vegetables, fruits, and whole grains and not be dropping a pound. So these are the things that we have to address and look at. And then we also, what makes our program different is we don't just give our patients lists of foods, choose a protein, choose a fruit. We give them a very structured diet. So we tell them for breakfast, here are 4 choices of proteins you can choose from. And here are 3 choices of fruits. It might not be 4 or 3, it's whatever the patient needs.
Sure.
But it's a very structured diet, so it makes it very, very easy. And the patient just looks at their program and sees what their choices are for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. So it makes it very easy for them. They don't have to add things up and calculate the number of grams of protein that they're eating and what time of day they need to eat how many grams of protein. We do that for them. And so when they look at their program, they just choose what they want to eat. The other thing is, as we go through the program, we work very hard at finding new foods that they love.
Yeah.
If you are giving up your pizza, ice cream, and potato chips, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon,
Yeah.
you need a treat. And you can't eat potato chips and lose weight. So we work at finding other foods, both through our chef and through foods that we produce with our food engineer to satisfy psychologically the cravings that patients have.
Yep. No, that absolutely makes sense. And so on that note, I'm sure everybody wants to know, can you walk us through what a day in the life of Dr. Constable looks like in terms of what you're eating these days?
Well, variety in diet is really important. And the other thing I haven't addressed here is the power of food, healthy food to heal your body, not just to make you lose weight, but to heal. And so, especially lately, I'm very focused on foods that are healing and that build a body that will allow me to have a healthy quality life for as long as possible. So, a typical day for me for breakfast, and I never skip meals, is I would get up and I might have one of our Diata pancakes, which is my favorite thing in the world. It's a huge.
We're going to have to pause there. Walk us through how you make one of the pancakes.
Oh, okay. So we have various food products to sell, but also we give patients the option of buying their food in the grocery store. So I do both. Diata pancake is a box of pancake mixes, little envelopes.
Yep.
There are about 7 in each box. And you just take one envelope, you mix it in a little cereal sized bowl with some water. Then you add an egg white and you cook it on a stick-free pan with a teaspoon or 2 of olive oil. And it makes a great, big, huge, fluffy pancake the size of a dinner plate. Your brain will think you're at IHOP and you're in fact eating an all-protein pancake. It's delicious. I eat that with a tablespoon of all-fruit jam, half a grapefruit, and a cup of coffee with whole milk in it and monk fruit sugar. Yep. So for those of you not familiar with monk fruit sugar, it's a 0-calorie sugar that's all natural. It comes from the monk fruit leaf. A typical lunch would be a massive salad, about 4 to 5 cups of vegetables. Now, when you think about that, that's the mixing bowl full of vegetables. At least 4 different kinds.
I mean, the salads you're eating are as big as your face. Like they are.
Yes.
They are huge. Yep.
Yep. That's correct. I never use diet salad dressing. I make my own salad dressing, which is balsamic vinegar, oil, and various spices. I have about 2 tablespoons of that. And then at my height and weight, I have about 3 ounces of protein.
Sure.
So that could be grilled chicken, tuna fish, shrimp, whatever happens to be in our fridge.
Sure.
That's a typical lunch for me. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, sometimes a little bit earlier, I have my favorite snack in the world, which is one of our caramel crunch bars. And these are bars that we have custom made for our program. I will tell you, I have patients that tell me they get flashlights and look for crumbs on the ground. These are delicious bars. But anyway, I have one every day. Sometimes if I'm working late, I will have one of our high protein gourmet puddings and one of our smart cakes. Our smart cakes have 38 calories and they're delicious. Other days,
which flavor smart cake do you like?
Oh, my favorite is the lemon. And my favorite pudding is the chocolate, the gourmet chocolate. But then sometimes I'll just have half to 2/3 of a cup of plain non-fat Greek yogurt and half a cup of blueberries or a couple of mandarin oranges, some fruit and some yogurt.
Yep.
That's if I'm working late and eating dinner late. Sure. Then around 8 or 8:30 p.m., I leave the office. I do not go home to eat dinner. I go to the gym. This is one of my favorite times of days. I put on my AirPods. I have some of my favorite musicians, which vary about every 2 weeks. Lately, it's Lady Gaga, if you can believe such a thing. I listen to Lady Gaga for about 45 minutes while I'm on the treadmill. On the elliptical. I go on the elliptical for about 45 minutes. And I just need to get my heart rate up. I don't have to do anything high intensity or violent.
Yep.
I think the classes are wonderful, but I just can't always make classes. I then do probably 2 or 3 balance exercises because I feel for people in their 50s and 60s, balance is a very, very important issue to address.
Yep.
And then I do 2 or 3 core exercises. I go home usually around 10 p.m. I have dinner, and dinner usually consists of 2 vegetables. So it might be stir fried or grilled hot vegetables, a mixture of them. I eat a lot of fish. Last night I had fresh halibut cooked in coconut oil with a little bit of balsamic fig dressing on it. And I also had something called shirataki mushroom noodle.
And where's the fig dressing from that you love?
So we have a recipe where we make it if you
Mm.
like to cook.
Yep.
But you can also buy it from Stonewell.
Yep. There's a
And I
great one
just
from
have,
Stonewall.
yep. And I just shake it up and put a tablespoon of that on white fish. It is delicious. And I chop that up and mix it in with something called miracle noodles, which are you can get in any grocery store.
Yep.
Shirataki mushroom noodles, Wegmans makes them. Costco has something called healthy noodles. These are all substitutes for pasta that have between 0 and 20 calories. And then if I'm still urging for something sweet at the end of my meal, I might have half a cup of fruit, and it would be a low glycemic index fruit, like half an apple, an orange, a tangerine. Or I might have, last night I had half of a Diata smart cake and about half of a vanilla pudding, which was delicious. And then that's it. I'm done.
Was that perhaps part of the new parfait recipe?
It was a recipe. Thank you, Caroline, for that. Or chef.
That we were perhaps testing out over there. Yes, those are delicious, delicious, delicious. And they are a fun summer treat.
But as you can see, Caroline, is that I eat a lot of food. If you look at the volume of food I eat a lot.
Yeah.
And I maintain my weight somewhere between 118 and 121 pounds.
Yep.
Yeah. And I eat a lot of food, much more than I did when I was over 200 pounds, much, much more food in terms of volume. I have so much more energy. And it's not just a question of being slim, it's a question of being energized.
No, and I think that's a key point that everyone should really focus in on. And I think patients are always really surprised by. You actually are eating more food, and it's food you're enjoying. It's not just raw romaine lettuce with, vinegar on it. You're eating a ton of food. And so can you talk to us a little bit more about that? Why do you want to be eating so much? What is the issue with kind of these hyper restrictive diets? What's the issue you're seeing there?
Okay. So first of all, whenever you're eating a minimal diet, you're thinking calories.
Yeah.
Okay. And again,
so just for everyone, it's properly called a very low calorie diet. Sometimes it's called a VLCD. Just in case everyone kind of wants that point of reference.
Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
So again, when you're sliding into the trap of counting calories, you're not understanding that all calories are not the same. So as I said before, 300 calories of grilled fish is not the same thing as 300 calories of chocolate. But more importantly, when you don't eat enough early in the day, there are several things that happen. So number one, your metabolism slows down. And I don't mean it just slows down a little bit. You're probably burning about 500 calories less per day. Secondly, is that this triggers your body to think that you're in starvation mode, and you start to release ghrelins, those hunger hormones, that urge to eat. And those ghrelin hormones, nobody gets up at 7:30 in the morning and eats chocolate chip cookies or has 3 glasses of wine. It's always in the late afternoon, but even more commonly in the evening. And this is where your hunger hormones peak. And it's because you didn't eat correctly earlier in the day. You didn't set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
So you need to eat a substantial breakfast, and it has to be the right chemistry of food, because if you eat a large breakfast that's 2 Dunkin' Donuts, that is a lot of sugar and fat, and that is going to really drive your insulin levels up. Your sugars will then crash, and now you're on an up and down cycle. But it's the right amount of protein, the right amount of carbs, the right amount of fat. First thing in the morning is vitally important. Lunchtime, generally, I don't eat carbohydrates at lunch. The massive salad is very, very low in carbs. And this is because we want to pull that insulin level down.
Yeah.
Okay. And let your body burn that fat. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I have a snack, but this does have carbohydrates in it. It's because my blood sugars are low. And then in the evening, we want to eat protein and vegetables, but not too many carbohydrates at night, because again, nighttime is where you burn your fat, and we want to keep those insulin levels nice and low. So there's a lot of food you need to eat, but there has to be a rhythm to the cycle of how you eat your food.
Now, talk to us a little bit more about how this changes in terms of nutrient deficiencies, hormonal imbalances. Obviously, we use a lot of supplements here at the practice. Talk to us a little bit more about how all that factors in. Why can't we just get, enough nutrients from the food we're eating if we're eating that many vegetables? Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah. I mean, the issue is that, first of all, most patients that come to us already have hormonal and nutrient imbalances that have gone on for years. And it's going to take a very, very long time before you can replace them with just regular healthy food. Sometimes as in their bodies age, they don't make the nutrients or process the nutrients as well as they did when you're 18 years old. And so you need to help your body. We don't make as much melatonin as we did when we were young. We don't process sugars as well as we did when we were young. So you need to boost our bodies because frankly, our bodies are just not built to live 50, 75, and 100 years. But the other thing is that we don't just hand out piles of supplements to every patient that walks in the door. That's not what we do. We measure a blood test, and when we see imbalances in their blood tests that discloses a nutritional balance, that's when I will recommend supplements. Patients do not have to use supplements from us. We do sell them, but they can get them anywhere, but it's important to use a high quality supplement. So
Great.
certain supplements, for example, vitamin D, if you just buy vitamin D, you're not going to absorb it. You need malate and vitamin K to pull it across the intestinal tract. Our supplements are not expensive. We offer them to patients because we want them to use high quality supplements, but our bodies are enormously complicated. We want to get them into balance, and supplementing them with things they're deficient in, as shown by a blood test, is something we encourage, but don't require our patients to do.
And so I just want to be mindful of time here. So given that it is now officially summer here in Pennsylvania on the East Coast, it is 90-some degrees today. I'm sure everybody has their summer bod on their mind. So what is the number one tip you would recommend for someone who has not really been so focused on their health, wellness, and weight loss journey for the past couple months? What's kind of the first thing you would have that person do?
Probably come and visit us to see where the problem is and what we can do. But no, having said that, start with thinking about vegetables. And I have a patient whose 2-year-old child calls me the vegetable doctor. And she's right, I am the vegetable doctor. But there's so much magic in vegetables, from preventing and reversing cancers to lowering cholesterol levels to improving your gut, balancing the microbiome of the gut. My advice would be start by adding vegetables at every single meal, even breakfast, and drinking a lot of water. And, as I said, it's complicated. I can't just give a one size fits all answer. This is where our specialty is. We address each patient on a very, very individual level. So, if you're really struggling and not losing the weight, what I would tell you is at some point, the quality of your life and the health of your life is really important. And it would be good for you to come and see us and see what we can do to help you. But if I were going to offer you one piece of advice at the beginning of the summer, a lot of water, a lot of vegetables in your diet, and a variety of vegetables, not the same vegetables every single meal.
All right. So now that everybody is socializing more, let's say you're having a dinner party this summer. Walk us through an example of what you might cook that allows you to have options that are healthy options that, obviously your guests are still going to love.
Yeah. So remember that when you give a dinner party, you get to choose what you're serving. So that means that you can always serve healthy options that work for you, and then a few less healthy options if somebody wants to indulge a little bit. So, for example, if I were to give a dinner party, a 4th of July party, what would I serve? Well, I might start with our Diata bread and a bruschetta dip, which was created by our chef. We have a new eggplant and tomato dip, which looks amazing. I'm going to try that. It's made with fresh basil and
I haven't
parsley.
tried it either. I'm excited to try it.
And then for dinner, I love the new recipe for chicken marinated in mint and grilled on the grill with a fresh salad. One of my favorite salads, maybe for the 4th of July, would be a slaw salad, which is red and white cabbage, you can buy shredded in the grocery store, some chopped up apple, and some roasted almonds in a balsamic vinaigrette. And then, of course, roasted vegetables are very simple, very easy. And then, as a starch, if anybody wants it, I would probably just go to the local bakery and buy a whole grain bread, which I probably wouldn't eat. And then for dessert, I always serve fresh fruit of one form or another. There are many different combinations of fresh fruit. They're delicious. But the other thing I have to admit that when my friends come to my house for dinner, I always serve a sweet dessert that I don't like. So my least favorite thing in the world is carrot cake. So you come to my house, you're always getting carrot cake or the equivalent. I don't serve chocolate mousse because I love chocolate mousse. And that would be my other tip to you. If you're having friends over for dinner, don't serve a dessert you love, because you may tell yourself that you're not going to eat it and it's just for your friends. If you love it, you're going to eat it. Yeah. But that would be a typical dinner that I might serve when I have friends over.
Yep. No, that absolutely makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. And I think, again, that just goes to show and really emphasize the point that, you really can and should be living your life to the fullest while you're losing weight. The point is not to live some miserable existence of life until you hit your goal weight. The point is, how do you embrace where you are right now? Really focus on the self-love, self-care, while learning these new habits and integrating them into your life so that you really can lose the weight and keep it off for good. I mean, that is the whole point. The point is not to be restrictive and miserable. So no, that absolutely makes sense. All right. So with that,
I just want to point one other thing out.
Sure.
Which is that I absolutely love to cook, and I'm always experimenting with food. But you don't have to be a cook to come into our program or to benefit from our recipes. We have many very, very simple recipes. I've had patients come in that really don't even know how to boil or scramble an egg. And that's fine. That's fine. There has to be a starting point for everybody.
Yep.
And there are very delicious, wonderful foods that require 2 or 3 ingredients to put together. So you never should be intimidated and feel that it's going to be too hard for you to do any of this simple cooking. And, some women are very busy. They're working horrific hours. There are answers for everybody, but it's a question of finding the right answer for you and your lifestyle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I will wrap up our first conversation. Thank you. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you, Caroline. This was fun.
Bye.